Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome this Sunday morning. Welcome to our Insight Meditation Community Washington and Center for Mindful Living Sunday morning meditation class. We've had one for over 20 years now, and I'm Hugh Byrne, and I'm one of the teachers. I normally teach the first Sunday of the month, which is this one. And warm welcome to everyone. Just a little for folks who are not familiar with IMCW, Insight Meditation Community Washington, is the larger organization and founded by Tara Brach, and many classes and offerings in the the DC metro area and beyond. And lots of things online as well. And part of Center for Mindful Living is within IMCW. We had our own space in Tenleytown, Northwest DC for a decade or so, but we had to let it go in the pandemic, like many other things that had to be, people had to let go of. And but it remains a very vibrant community with many classes and meditations online and more in person as well now. We have a Saturday morning in-person class now for those in the greater metro area, DC metro area, in very close to where we used to have our center in Tenleytown. And this is one of the offerings, the Sunday morning class. And I've been teaching with IMCW for 20-some years, and teaching overall. This will be coming up about 25 years teaching. And just kind of recognizing today, these days, we're living in some challenging times in many ways, in terms of very intense period in terms of the elections coming up here in 31 or something days, a month from now. And, lots going on in the world, and lots of suffering, the conflicts in the Middle East and in, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and, much else as well. So, what I want to spend some time reflecting on today and sharing around today, how do we hold these kind of larger difficulties? How do the teachings of the Dharma, we call the Buddha's teachings, the Dharma, Dharma is a wider word. It really means the truth. But in the case of the Buddha's teachings, it's the Buddha's teachings of truth, the teachings of the Four Noble Truths and the other practices that help us live more freely and wisely and compassionately. And I want to share some reflections on that today, how these teachings can really support us in difficult times, in all times, but can be particularly helpful to us, in times of stress and concern and maybe fear, and also of division. That's kind of part of what we're living with right now. So the format of the class is a fairly straightforward one. We, after the welcome, we have a meditation, a guided meditation, some guidance and some silence. And then we'll have a talk. I'll share some reflections. Maybe I'll ask some questions of you to begin with. And then we'll have some time for sharing, depending on how long the talk goes. And then today we have some as Dan said, Bob's going to share some things with us about some development, some plans for the Center for Mindful Living that we want to share with you. More of that later, and then we'll maybe, if there's a little time, we'll finish with a short meditation. So, with that, let's start with a meditation. So, I'd invite you to find yourself a posture that's comfortable and as relaxed as possible. It's helpful to have your back straight. If you're sitting, you might be in another posture. You might be standing or walking or lying down. Whatever posture you're in, just get comfortable, get relaxed. If you're sitting, invite the shoulders to relax. You might let your eyes close, let your attention come down into the body. Kind of drop out of the thinking mode. Just let yourself arrive, settle. Invite the shoulders to relax. Let the chest and the belly be open, receptive, just receiving the breath in a way that's comfortable. And you might find it helpful to take a few longer, deeper breaths, just to help you arrive and settle, step out of any kind of tensions you might be holding. So, nice full deep in breath, filling the chest, filling the lungs. And then releasing, relaxing on the out breath. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. Letting the deeper breathing help you settle and arrive as fully as you can, just into being here. And just letting your breath settle whenever you're ready into its natural rhythm. And it can be helpful to begin a meditation by the Buddha called gladdening the mind, gladdening the mind. And one way we can do this is just to reflect on gratitude, just some things in our life that we're grateful for. Just shift the attention towards what you can appreciate, what's been given to you. You don't have to do anything to get it, but just kind of part of the bounty of life. Maybe loved ones, dear friends in our life. Maybe conditions of life that we don't have to worry too much about where the next meal is coming from or how to pay the rent or the mortgage. They're just the conditions that kind of allow us to live as full a life as possible. All the gifts of nature, the creatures, the animals, the birds, the insects, the air, the water, trees. You can just take in and appreciate the gifts you've been given, what you can be thankful for. Even if things are difficult right now, the things that you can appreciate, be grateful for. Maybe teachings that have supported you and helped you kind of live maybe more freely, maybe more happily. Practices, religious or spiritual practices. And if you can, just let yourself feel what you're grateful for. Let gratitude open your heart as much as is possible right now. And you might consciously invite a smile or a half smile to your face. See how it would be to kind of meet the world, meet your experience with the attitude, with the expression of a smile. And letting your attention open to whatever is present for you in the body, the heart, the mind. The Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi speaks about welcoming the guests, seeing everything, all our experiences, as like guests coming to visit. And our task really is just to welcome them, allow whatever is coming to be here, to come, to stay for a while, and when it's ready, let it go. Or allow it to go of its own accord. So whatever bodily feelings you're aware of right now, can you just allow them to come and go in their own time? Maybe there's a feeling of tightness somewhere, or pressure, or warmth, or coolness. Just allow it to come, let it come, let it be, let it go. Perhaps using the breath as a support, just kind of riding the waves of breath. whatever mood or emotions you notice, make space too for them. Welcome the guests. It says welcome the guests, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. Whatever thoughts or mind states are present, just let them come and go. And it can be helpful to have a focus for your attention. You might notice the mind often has a mind of its own, goes off into plans and memories or daydreams, or many different places. And so having a focus on the breath or some other object can be helpful to just ground our attention in the here and now. So just aware of breathing in, breathing out. If it's helpful, you could just note in and out as the breath enters the nostrils and then it's exhaled through the mouth or the nose, just in and out. Or rise and fall as the chest and the belly expand and contract, rise and fall. And when you notice the mind has moved into thought, into plans or memories or worries, fantasies, whatever, just choose to come back, choose to let the attention come back, incline the mind back to the body, back to the breath, back to being here. By bringing back the attention again and again with kindness, gently, we train ourselves to be more here than more kind of lost in our stories and narratives and plans and memories. And we can find peace in just this moment as it is. As the poet Dorothy Hunt says, peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. Peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. We can always begin again, whether in formal meditation or in daily life. It just takes a moment of awareness, a moment of remembering, and we're back, we're here, not lost in our plans or in memories, and not a problem when we do go off into thought, but just to see that the Buddha said the path to happiness, the path to freedom, really comes, the direct path is through being present here and now, being here with our experience. We'll finish with this poem by Mary Oliver called I Worried. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it, and I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing and gave it up, and took my old body and went out into the morning and sang. So in your own time, it's coming back, opening your eyes, coming back into the group, the more outward looking mode. And welcome anyone who joined us since we started. Welcome to everyone. Very warm welcome. If you're new, we'd love to hear from you, and if you want to just put in the chat, where you're joining us from, and anything else you'd like to share, please go ahead. And welcome back, everyone who has come before. Good to see you all. And Jacqueline from Annapolis, welcome, Jacqueline. Welcome, Sally from Talent, Oregon. Great to have you here with us, Sally. And Matilda, good to have you with us. A recent college grad who just moved to DC. Warm welcome to all of you. And today, as I mentioned, I'd like to talk about how these teachings and these practices can support us in challenging times. I kind of talk about challenging times in a way a bit as a given, because I think all of us kind of understand that these are not necessarily normal everyday times. Well, it's been a long time since things have perhaps been really normal. What is normal anymore? But some of you may know there's an election coming up in a month, he says tongue in cheek. And a lot of, there's a lot of concern about how that may unfold. And I'm wondering, without kind of getting much into the content of that right now, just to check with you how you're doing, how you're feeling, and anything coming up for you right now that you could share in the chat. How you're feeling. You're feeling peaceful, at ease, calm. In terms of right now, I mean, we just had a meditation, so hopefully that could be somewhat settling and calming and peaceful. But maybe also just in these days, anything coming up for you that might be worth naming, addressing, please just share it in the chat. And welcome, Leo. Thank you. I'm glad the meditation was helpful. Leo from China. Great to have you with us. Laurie is worried and cautious. Okay. And anyone, if you'd like to share anything. Jacqueline, anxious. When I think about where we are right now, particularly in relation to the elections coming up, for me, certainly a level of anxiety is present. The sense of things are very much, I think as anyone who's following things in any relatively close way knows things are very close. And certainly for me, and I'm not speaking for everybody or trying to speak for everyone, but I do see two very separate paths. One that promises, some level of kind of a vision of, as I see it, of America as kind of expanding rights and of different groups who may have been excluded, but becoming, moving closer to, what Dr. Martin Luther King and others have spoken about as the beloved community. A community where we really care for each other, where there's compassion for those who are suffering and those who are least able to take care of themselves, and a sense of kind of expanding and sharing the benefits and the wealth that we have in kind of certainly one of the richest countries in the world, and I see a vision for that. That is one possibility in the years ahead, but I also see a vision which I feel is very very divisive, very chaotic, very much kind of dividing us into us and them. And I know we can all be caught up in us and them. I'm not making that out to be kind of one team or the other. But all of that, I mean, there's definitely two different visions being put out there, and it makes enormous difference to us, I think all of us, how things unfold in the weeks ahead. And so without getting kind of into, certainly not, this is right and that is wrong, but just to kind of lay that out, and we might have different views about that, but the situation we're in. But I think we can see that it will make a big difference how things unfold. And so to be anxious, to be concerned, perhaps to be worried, I think is a natural and an appropriate response. And if our anxiety or worry or fear kind of get into the driver's seat for us, then we get caught up very much in suffering. We get, you could say, you get wrapped around the axle. We get caught up in, what if this happens? What if that happens? So there's a way in which concern and certainly caring and wanting things to go in a particular direction, where that is very appropriate. But once it becomes something that, in the Buddhist terms is tied to craving, and anything that where we kind of like get swept up in something, we get identified with, it's got to be like this, it's got to be like that, we can't have that. Then we get wrapped up in suffering, and, it's very painful for us, and it can be painful for other people as well. Thank you for sharing. And Terry, vulnerable, optimistic. Diane, the concern about those in Western North Carolina. Thank you, and just thank you for bringing them and all who are suffering from, still from the hurricane, and all those who've lost their homes and lost so much in the hurricane. Leslie, I often remind myself of what Hugh said before the 2020 election: action absorbs anxiety. I'm off to PA to canvass among the Hispanic community and forget my anxiety for a bit. Thank you, Leslie. And that's something I was going to be talking about a little bit later on, how we work with, the challenges that, that come up, and, when we do get caught up in worry and concern. I come back, often come back to poetry, and others here I know, love poetry too. But I think of the Wendell Berry's poem. Many of you may know it, The Peace of Wild Things. He says, I'll share it with you. He says, when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I believe that Wendell Berry wrote that poem in the kind of when things were very intense in the Vietnam War, in the probably the early 70s, late 60s. I don't have the exact date. But it captures for me some things I think are really important. The sense of finding peace among wild things. And I love particularly the line about the creatures, non-human creatures, how they don't tax their lives with forethought of grief. And it really contrasts with the way we do tax our lives with forethought of grief. We, in the Buddhist language, we contract, we get caught up, we get tight around things that are in the future. Forethought of grief, forethought of the bad things that are going to happen. And when we do that, we suffer. It's painful. It's an expression of what the Buddha spoke of as the first noble truth. It's suffering. And the suffering, he says, actually has its origins in craving. We're getting caught up. It can be craving, like I need this, I want this, I've got to have it, like a drink or a drug. But it can just as easily be pushing something away. I hate this, I don't want this, I don't like this, I've got to get rid of this. But when we get caught up in those states, or fearful states where we're worried, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And then, the mind gets takes control. It's not it's not our awareness, our kind of more, put another way, it's not our wisest mind that's kind of in the driver's seat. It's kind of the mind spinning out of control. Oh, this is going to happen, that is going to happen, whatever. So I'm interested how, just a show of hands for those who are on camera right now. How many of you feel some level of kind of heightened anxiety or concern in this period? Certainly put my hand up. Yeah, I see most who have their hands on camera putting their hands up, or putting the virtual hands up. There's a lot to be concerned about, and a lot to care about. And so I believe we really need practices that will allow us to bring awareness to when we are spinning out, when we are getting caught up in, particularly in this case, in stress, fear, worry, anxiety. And the Buddha's teachings are to not to judge ourselves or blame ourselves or anybody else for that, but just to be aware of when we do get kind of hooked in that way. There's lots of great metaphors for suffering, and I like, getting tangled, getting in a tangle. We get kind of caught up in things, or we get hooked, or we feel stuck. There's this sense of we're not at peace, where things aren't, how we would like them to be. We'd like to be calm and like to be peaceful, but we're caught up in some form of contraction. And the Buddha says that the way to peace, the way to freedom, comes through coming back to the present moment, coming back to our direct experience here and now. So he spoke about mindfulness, this conscious, kind awareness, as the direct path to liberation, through being aware of our experience as it is, moment to moment, is a way to see where we're hooked on anything and to let go. It's a way to see that everything is changing and that we can't hold on to anything. And so to be able to find peace in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of things happening that we don't like. Can we find peace in the midst of all of this? And if we can be present fully with our experience here and now, this is he says, the direct path to freedom, to letting go of clinging, to letting go of suffering, and to living really a free life in the midst of whatever the circumstances of life are. So even if things are not going the way we want them to go, even if, the situation is difficult in our own life or in the country or in the world more generally, through cultivating these practices of, particularly the practice of awareness, the practice of seeing clearly, through being present with whatever is here right now. So as I'm saying that, I'm talking about these practices, but I invite you to, just shift your attention to inward, to your own experience. What is present for you right now? What are you noticing in your body, in your heart, in your mind? And can you say yes to this moment? Even if tightness is here, even if there's some level of fear or worry, can you meet that with kindness, with friendliness, without judging yourself, without blaming yourself? Just, okay, this is what's here right now. So in the midst of all that's going on, both the tragedies and the broader situations, the global situation, there's lots to be concerned about. There's climate change, there's the conflicts in the world, there's the elections. And without a practice of bringing awareness to our experience and opening to whatever's arising, opening to what Zorba the Greek called the full catastrophe, the whole enchilada. Can I say yes to this? And this, can I say yes to this? Without a practice to help us do that, I think what we tend to do is we just get pulled whatever way the winds blow. The Buddha talked about 8 worldly winds. He talked about pain and pleasure, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute, things that will come to all of us. We'll all experience pain. We'll all experience some times of pleasure. We'll experience gain in some way, financial or, in other ways that things will go well. And in other times, there'll be losses. People will praise us. Oh, you're great. You did a great job there. At other times, people, oh, that was lousy. That should never have been allowed. Whatever, could be very critical. Praise and blame. You'll be looked on, kindly by some, but not by others. This is just the way life is. The Buddha talked about it as the 8 worldly winds. The winds will blow, but we don't need to be blown around by the winds. We can, there's, an image often used of a mountain. The mountain is there, the wind comes, the snowstorms come, the hail comes, whatever comes, but the mountain remains steady and solid. In the same way, we can, through training the heart and the mind, we can remain balanced and steady in the midst of all of these worldly winds, the winds of life. So, as we go through these times, having a conscious practice, a meditation practice that allows us to just bring awareness to what's here, what's arising moment to moment, and really cultivate a heart and a mind that's able to say yes to whatever is arising, yes to the present moment, because what is here, and if we struggle with it, if we fight with reality, we'll tend to suffer. If we accept that this is how life is right now, it may not be how we wanted it to be, but this is what's arising, this is what's here right now. Then it allows us to be able to make choices, to react and act and react from a place of balance and steadiness and equanimity, rather than from a place of reactivity, being swept up in things. Thank you, Dorothy. Dorothy says you need to be able to step into the fire and find a safe place for yourself. Thank you. Melinda says, the poem, memorizing poetry is one way I'm trying to alleviate the anxiety of the moment, and writing postcards. That's great, thank you. So another, I've been talking a bit about the fears that can arise and the anxiety and the worries about, how things are going to go, and fear of how my life and my children's lives may be, as Wendell Berry says. These practices of awareness can help us to meet whatever's arising in ways that don't create suffering and don't perpetuate suffering. Another emotion, I've been talking about, fear and worry, anxiety. Another emotion that can come up is and feel strong is anger. We can feel anger, resentment, things like annoyance at what people are doing that we might disagree with. We might feel threatened by it, and it brings up anger in us. And again, anger, like anxiety, like a level of concern, can actually be a fuel for wise action. If we see somebody do something that's really harmful and it makes us angry, that anger, if it's met, with equanimity, can actually be fuel for taking action to, protect somebody or protect ourselves. It can be very, as an emotion, it can be a very healthy and necessary one. But when we get swept up in anger, it can turn into much more problematical mind states, like hatred, like blame and judgment, and it can divide us from others, of like, oh, they're this kind of person, and they're always doing this, and it can create divisions, it can create suffering. So to again just come back and feel, if there's anger is present, allow ourselves to experience that emotion. How does it feel in my body? Can I make space for these feelings to come and go, for the tightness, for the tension, for the heat? Let it come, let it be, let it go. And with the thoughts, what we can do is we can work with the thoughts that come up. Oh, I'm going to do something to so-and-so. And we can see that those thoughts may be unnecessary and unhelpful, that we can respond without doing things that are going to harm other people or harm ourselves. So how to be able to bring awareness fully to our emotions and our mind states in ways that can lead to wise action and compassionate action. We have to be able to feel what we feel, to open fully to our experiences, and then through processing them, through allowing ourselves to fully feel what we're feeling, then from that full acceptance of what we're experiencing, wise action and compassionate action can arise. To know that it's not going to be helpful to scream at somebody or get in a fight with somebody, but it may well be helpful to say, to express our concern about something, to say what we need to say, to share our concern about something, so that appropriate action comes out of fully being present with our experience. So at the heart of working with with the challenges that we're facing in these times is the willingness to be present with our experience here and now. One of the teachers who speaks very clearly about this, and most people may be familiar with him, is Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now and other, best known for that book. He says, make the now the primary focus of your life. Make the now, the present moment, the primary focus of your life. Always say yes to the present moment. So whatever's here, say yes to it. He says, what could be more futile, more insane, than to create inner resistance to something that already is? What could be more insane than to oppose life itself, which is now and always now? He says, surrender to what is. Say yes to life. And see how life suddenly starts working for you rather than against you. So say yes to life. So when we're suffering, we're really always saying no to life. This shouldn't be like this. I shouldn't be feeling this. I should be having another feeling. I shouldn't be feeling this want for this thing that I'm wanting. I should be having that thing. So we're not willing to be with the direct experience. So we go outward to look for things that will make us feel, more make us feel in some way better. This is what the Buddha talks about as the craving. We're not present with our experience as it is. So the practice of mindfulness, the practice of clearly seeing and opening to our present moment experience is the doorway to to happiness, to greater freedom, to being at peace even in the midst of challenging, painful, difficult circumstances and situations. That's one part of the puzzle, I think, is to say yes to what's present, and to particularly notice and be aware when the mind goes off into stories, particularly stories of the future. Stress, anxiety, worry, they're always about the future. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, that's going to happen. These bad things are going to happen. So to bring awareness to the mind when it gets caught up in that kind of thinking, and just keep coming back. Can I come back? Can I let go of that story that, this thing is going to happen or might happen, and making me tight and tense, and just come back to the feeling in the body. Notice the thoughts without, following them, without getting identified with them. So these are the practices of awareness, of insight, of wisdom that help us meet and hold our experiences and respond wisely and kindly. There's a metaphor you might be familiar with that's used in the Buddhist teachings, is that just as a bird needs two wings to fly, so in our practice, we need two wings to fly. Our practice needs two wings to fly. And those are the wings of wisdom, and the wing of wisdom or insight, and the wing of compassion. We need both the practices of awareness that I've been speaking about, of mindfulness, of insight, of clarity, of seeing, oh, this is helpful, but this isn't helpful. It's helpful to just be with my experience here and now. It's not helpful to spin out those stories, and when I notice them, I can come back. Can just come back. So those are the practice of insight, of awareness. We also need the practices of compassion, the practices of the heart, practices of loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity. Because in themselves, the insight practices, if they don't bring in the heart, they can be disconnected. They can be too hard. They can prevent us in a way, perhaps, from seeing the fullness of our connection with all beings. We need to also cultivate qualities that are grounded in our connection with other beings, other people, and all of life. In the Buddha's teachings, there's 4 heart practices: a practice of loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, which are really expressions of caring for all of life, a commitment. Teacher Christina Feldman talks about these practices as an attitudinal commitment to friendliness and kindness to all beings and all experiences. A commitment. So imagine you're looking at the world, rather than through a lens of competition or separation, these people have this and I want this, to look at everything and everybody through the lens of kindness and compassion, so that we consciously cultivate kindness towards all beings. We can train the mind and the heart to to open and be caring towards and compassionate towards even those who are causing suffering. That we don't exclude anybody from our commitment to caring and of caring and compassion. So these practices, if we cultivate these two wings of the bird, the wing of awareness, of wisdom, and the wing of compassion, kindness, caring, non-separation, it supports us greatly in these times. If you were to practice every day, cultivating loving kindness, or if any of us were to cultivate loving kindness towards those who view the world and the political world in a very different way than you do, including political figures that you might not like and you might disagree with vehemently, that you practice cultivating kindness towards them, recognizing that, as the Dalai Lama says, everyone wants to be happy, but many of us go about seeking happiness in ways that actually don't make us happy, that don't lead us to happiness or to peace or to freedom. We think we'll be happy if, maybe we've internalized the view that, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and if I don't get what I want, if other people, if I don't get what that I'm in competition with the other dogs in the world to get what I need, and they're a problem, they're an obstacle to me. And if we've internalized those views, then what naturally will arise out of them is separation, is suffering, is a life that's really painful. So those people who are living that kind of reality of like, it's us and them, and we got to destroy these people or they'll get us, those kind of views, they're coming from a place of suffering. So if we can open our hearts, not just to those we care about, those we love, those we're close to, but through training and through practice, open our hearts to those we disagree with, those who think differently than we do, then we live in the world in a very different way. We're not coming from that kind of tight, defended place or a fearful place. We're coming from a place of really connection, of love. We're cultivating love. And having that be the ground of our way of being in the world. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to read some of you may be familiar with a Buddhist teacher and really renowned ecologist, environmentalist, Joanna Macy, written many books, and she's in, I think, her late 80s now. And she practiced a lot in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And she tells a story which I think is a kind of feels like an appropriate one to share right now. It's called the Shambhala Prophecy. And she's talking to one of her teachers who shares with her this story, and she kind of interacts with him in this. She says, "There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger. Barbarian powers have arisen. Although they waste their wealth in preparations to annihilate each other, they have much in common. Weapons of unfathomable devastation and technologies that lay waste to the world. It is now, when the future of all beings hangs by the frailest of threads, that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. You cannot go there, for it's not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala warriors. You could say spiritual warriors. But you cannot recognize a Shambhala warrior by sight, for there is no uniform or insignia. There are no banners. And then there are no barricades from which to threaten the enemy. For the Shambhala warriors have no land of their own. Always they move on the terrain of the barbarians themselves. Now comes the time when great courage is required of the Shambhala warriors, moral and physical courage, for they must go into the very heart of the barbarian power and dismantle the weapons. To remove these weapons in every sense of the word, they must go into the corridors of power where the decisions are made. The Shambhala warriors know they can do this because the weapons are mano-maya, mind-made. They're made by the mind. This is very important to remember, Joanna, the teacher's talking to her. These weapons are made by the human mind, so they can be unmade by the human mind. The Shambhala warriors know that the dangers that threaten life on earth do not come from evil deities or extraterrestrial powers. They arise from our own choices and relationships. So now, the Shambhala warriors must go into training. How do they train, I asked? They train in the use of two weapons. The weapons are compassion and insight. Both are necessary. We need this first one. This is compassion, he said, lifting his right hand, because it provides us the fuel. It moves us out to act on behalf of other beings. But by itself, it can burn us out. So we need the second as well, which is insight into the dependent co-arising of all things. Everything arises depending on other things. It lets us see that the battle is not between good people and bad people, for the line between good and evil runs through every human heart. We realize that we are interconnected as in a web, and that each act with pure motivation affects the entire web, bringing consequences we cannot measure or even see. But insight alone, he said, can seem too cool to keep us going. So we need as well the heat of compassion, our openness to the world's pain. Both weapons or tools are necessary to the Shambhala warrior. So this story is kind of legendary story, or kind of story of these underlying energies of the world. Emphasize how we need both these practices, both wings of the bird. We need the insight and clarity to know, what is wise action, to know what to let go of, to know when we're suffering and how we can let go of the craving that leads to suffering. But we also need the practices of the heart that allow us to see the goodness in all beings, that all beings, that we're all like flowers coming out of the earth. We all have the capacity for great goodness, but also for great harm, and what unfolds really depends on the seeds that we sow. Do we cultivate the seeds of anger, of hatred, of division? Or do we cultivate the seeds of compassion, of joy, of loving kindness? The seeds we sow, the seeds we cultivate will blossom in the ways, depending on which ones we develop, which ones we cultivate. Excuse me. So in a time like this, we need these practices, I think, more than ever. And we need both wings of the bird. We need the practices of insight, of mindfulness, of clarity. And we need the practices of the heart. So I'll leave it here and invite you to share any reflections. If anything comes up for you, if you have any questions, please feel free to share. We won't have a lot of times. I won't have a lot of time for sharing. We've got a couple of things that we need to talk about before we finish today. Sine says, who are barbarians in this story? It is conflicting with compassion, the wording. Yeah, that may be a kind of harsh word of barbarians. But I mean, what it's pointing to is those who haven't had the benefits of being able to see clearly, who are caught up in the sense of division and fear, who are caught up in those kind of painful emotions or emotions that can lead to suffering if we don't respond to them wisely. Those, what it's really saying is ignorance, where ignorance is in the driver's seat, and it can happen to any of us, and it can happen in whole cultures where those who control the society are those who are caught up most in fear and hatred and division, and we've seen that around the world, and we've seen it through history. But it's also possible, both in our own lives and in our own practice, to cultivate an open heart and to live freely and with kindness and love in the world, and to bring that into the world in order to be able to create the beloved community where we can all live together in kindness and friendliness and mutual support, rather than from a place of division. Thank you, Deborah. The source of the Shambhala warrior story. I think it's in the Tibetan tradition. I'm most familiar with it through Joanna Macy. And you can easily get her books. You can Google Joanna Macy and Shambhala Warrior, and you can find that story. But for me, I think it's a really powerful kind of symbolic story of these energies that are in life, that are in our world, and are within each one of us. That we can cultivate the qualities that lead to happiness and well-being, or we can cultivate the qualities that lead to separation and division, and basically to suffering. Thank you all for being here today. I hope some of these reflections may have been helpful in terms of working and helping you in these days. We'll be having similar continuing to address these issues in the time ahead. Let's just have a minute of meditation together to finish. Just appreciating our time together today. Maybe breathing in, wishing yourself well. Breathing out, send out a wish of loving kindness to everyone here. May you be happy, may you be safe, may you be peaceful, may you live with ease and with kindness. And holding yourself with kindness as you breathe in, maybe breathing out wishes of loving kindness out into the world. There's so much suffering in the world, and there's also so much kindness, so much care and compassion. So just sending the wishes out into the world. May all beings be safe, be happy, be peaceful. May all beings live with ease and with kindness. Thank you, everyone. Wishing you a very good week ahead, and we'll see you again soon. I teach the first Sunday of the month typically. Thank you all.